You can work out as hard as you want, but you won't burn fat if you're not focused on what you're eating and how much of it you're eating. Unfortunately, there's a lot of confusing and contradicting information out there, so it's very easy to make some pretty common mistakes when setting up your diet plan for fat loss. So today I want to go over 10 of these major diet mistakes that you'll want to avoid because these make it much harder for you to lose fat and keep it off. And the first mistake that makes you waste a whole lot of energy and time on unnecessary meal prep is this false idea that you need to eat a large number of small meals throughout the day to support your metabolism and to effectively burn fat. That's why most fitness meal plans call for anywhere from 5 to 6 meals per day. And like I said, people that recommend this high meal frequency strategy claim that it keeps your metabolism high since you keep feeding the fire consistently, and that supports weight loss. But is this true? Well, the answer is no. A meta-analysis concluded that there is no difference between nibbling and gorging when it comes to 24-hour calorie intake and expenditure. In other words, it doesn't matter whether you eat many or a few meals per day, as long as you consume the same amount of food, the impact on your metabolism and on your body will be the same. On top of that, eating more frequently might make it even harder for you to lose weight. That's because, as found by research from the University of Hawaii, eating frequency was positively associated with energy intake. This doesn't necessarily mean that eating more often will cause you specifically to gain weight and that eating less often will cause you specifically to lose weight. It highly depends on what works for you. But if you find it hard to lose weight and eat many meals multiple times throughout the day, you might want to try reducing your meal frequency and see if that helps you better control your caloric intake. The next big mistake that prevents people from even starting to change their diet is focusing too much on the details and not focusing enough on the big picture. Losing weight and burning fat is simple on paper. You just consume fewer calories than you burn, and you'll drop the pounds off the scale. But despite its simplicity, you can make dieting as complex as you want. For example, beginners might wonder whether they should go organic or not, whether broccoli is better for weight loss than cauliflower, or whether it's better to boil vegetables rather than eat them raw. And sure, those are interesting questions, but in the grand scheme of things, they'll either have a very negligible or no impact on your weight loss results at all. Many people get lost and overwhelmed when they start focusing more and more on the rather non-essential details. Should you eat red meat or white meat? How long after your workout should you have a protein shake? What's the best time of the day to eat carbs? Of course, it's okay to ask these questions, but don't let such small things distract you from the bigger picture. And the two key big picture tips that you need to follow as your guiding North Stars are that you have to be in a calorie deficit and you have to make sure that you eat enough protein every single day. If you can follow these two big picture things, you will burn fat and improve your body composition. Don't allow yourself to get overwhelmed with the details because there's enough mismatching information out there to make your head spin from vegan to carnivore to keto to low carb to low fat, and you'll just get lost and stuck in analysis paralysis. You have to understand that any diet can work as long as it works for you. Another very widespread diet myth is this false belief that you have to eat a lot of fat and a low amount of carbs in order to burn fat. For many people, paleo and keto type diet plans can be very effective for weight loss. One reason for this is because you limit your carbohydrates, which is one of the most overconsumed macronutrients. Now, where many low-carb dieters end up going wrong is that they believe that the more fat they eat, the more fat they'll lose. The rationale behind this is that studies show that consuming more fat increases fat oxidation in the body, which is definitely true. However, most people that are just drinking MCT oils and adding tablespoons of coconut oil to their coffee every morning, what they fail to realize is that burning body fat and burning dietary fat are two different things. Just because your body is burning more of the fat that you're eating for fuel doesn't mean that you'll be losing more body fat. For that to happen, you'll have to be in a calorie deficit. Otherwise, your body will simply get the energy it needs by burning the dietary fat that you take in from eating high-fat foods. And if your body satisfies all of its energy requirements just by breaking down dietary fat, that means there's no need to break down body fat for energy. At the end of the day, to burn fat, you must burn more calories than you consume, and it doesn't necessarily matter whether you get your macros from carbs, fat, or protein. Sure, some people find it easier to control their calorie intake on a low carb, high fat diet, but this doesn't mean that you should eat as much fat as possible, because adding unnecessary calories to your diet, like adding butter to your coffee or eating coconut oil by the spoon, that'll only add additional calories and make fat loss harder. Next, let's talk about taking the weekend off when it comes to your diet. Most people work from Monday to Friday, and then they take the weekend off to recover and enjoy themselves. And this extends out to their diet. While this can work very well if you're following a structure to balance your calories, it can also completely backfire, especially for most people, since they're cycling their calories blindfolded without knowing what they're actually aiming for. You see, even though you do have to be in a calorie deficit to burn fat, it doesn't matter if you're in a calorie deficit on any one particular day. Instead, it's about whether you're in a calorie deficit over the long run. By letting yourself go on the weekend, it's very likely that you'll end up undoing the calorie deficit that you created by following a clean dieting approach throughout the rest of the week. I'm not saying that you can't have cheat meals or even full out cheat days every weekend, but without planning on how to balance out those calories throughout the rest of the week, you'll probably get stuck and you might even gain fat in the process. So if you're planning to overshoot by 1,000 calories on the weekend by eating things like pizza and ice cream, then you have to make sure that you deduct those 1,000 calories from the rest of your week to maintain steady fat loss. It can be done, it just has to be done correctly. Another issue is thinking that you can't possibly get fat while eating clean. The fundamentals of eating clean suggest that you should eat more whole foods like fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, whole grains, and healthy fats while limiting highly processed snacks, sweets, and other prepackaged foods. And there are a lot of benefits to this very simple approach. In fact, just by eating single ingredient whole foods, you can lose weight. For example, it's probably not surprising for you to learn that research shows that consuming more fruit and vegetables can help people lose weight and keep it off. However, eating clean doesn't reduce the need for being in a calorie deficit. You still have to consume fewer calories than you burn if you want to burn fat. And that's where many people go wrong. Some people believe that as long as they eat clean and consume foods that are seen as weight loss friendly, they don't have to really worry about how much of those foods they eat. But that's not true, especially when we factor in health foods like nuts. These kinds of foods might even be high in protein, but they're also very high in calories and easy to overeat. Now, the benefit of eating clean is that foods like fruit and vegetables make it easier to control your energy intake automatically. That's because compared to the number of calories that they provide, they're very filling, so they tend to reduce total calorie intake throughout the day. But this doesn't make you immune to overeating, especially when it comes to fruit. And this belief that unlimited amounts of fruit will help you burn fat, since fruit is healthy, right? Well, that happens to be a huge diet mistake all on its own. Beginners that want to lose weight will often reach for fruit and vegetable juices to burn fat. But what they don't consider is that these juices can contain hundreds of calories and tons of sugar. It blows my mind when clients pack a blender full of fruit alongside with a tiny bit of vegetables, and they drink that thinking that all that sugar is going to help them lose weight just because the fruit is healthy. Instead, they should minimize the amount of fruit and maximize the amount of vegetables in that smoothie to assist with fat loss. This obviously carries over to whole fruit as well. If you have 6 pieces of fruit every day thinking that that'll help you lose fat, you're very wrong, because it's going to add a good amount of simple sugars and calories to your diet, potentially blocking fat loss. This can be applied with other clean foods too. And the bottom line is that eating clean can assist with weight loss because it'll usually help you consume fewer calories. But if you eat too much clean food, you're going to push yourself out of a calorie deficit, and that'll prevent you from burning fat. This is actually why another common mistake is guesstimating your portions and not tracking your calorie intake. Now, I think it's very important for everyone to get to the point where they don't have to track calories, and they just have more of a natural intuition based on past experience. However, if you're not familiar with nutrition labels or you've never tracked your calories and macros beforehand, it's very easy to underestimate how many calories you eat and how many calories you burn. So if you don't track your food intake, you might think you're in a calorie deficit even though you're not. For example, studies report that participants significantly underestimate how much they eat and can underreport their calorie intake by as much as 2,000 calories per day. So it's better to track your calorie intake by weighing your food and putting it into an app like Chronometer or MyFitnessPal. That way you'll know how many calories you're actually consuming. Now, like I said, this isn't something that you'll have to do for the rest of your life unless you want to. Instead, once you have more experience with tracking your calories, you'll most likely be able to guesstimate your calorie and macronutrient intake, especially if you eat the same foods and meals regularly. Another major mistake is following celebrity meal plans or fad diets that you see in a magazine or some health article online. First, understand that many of the meal plans that you think your favorite actor, model, or athlete follows are completely made up, and the celebrity advertising the plan doesn't actually eat that way. The second issue is just because something worked for someone else doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. We all have different needs, preferences, and physiologies. Now, the third issue is that celebrities usually advertise following fad diet plans that have no scientific backing. Usually these are quick fix programs designed to help the actor or the model lose weight as fast as possible for a certain role in a movie. For example, in order to prepare for her role in Dreamgirls, Beyoncé followed the Master Cleanse diet. On this diet, there were no solid foods eaten for at least 10 days, and the only source of calories and nutrients came from a homemade sweetened lemon beverage. The idea is that doing this will detox your body and accelerate weight loss. Unfortunately, there is little to no evidence that cleanses and detoxes work. In fact, they most likely don't. And this Beyoncé Master Cleanse diet is actually terrible for your health and for your body composition for many reasons, including the fact that you'll be taking in almost no protein, which means that a large chunk of the weight that you do lose will be in the form of muscle mass. This is also without mentioning how unsustainable this type of a plan is. So stay away from fad and celebrity diet plans. The next mistake is not drinking enough water and other zero-calorie beverages. I'm not going to spend too much time explaining the benefits of avoiding all the extra calories and sugars that come from sweetened beverages like sodas and fruit juices. Instead, I want you to understand that drinking enough water by itself can help you reduce your calorie intake just by what it does to your stomach. Research shows that people that drink mostly water consume on average 9% fewer calories per day compared to those that don't. And obviously, aside from the fact that you're less likely to consume energy-dense beverages like soda, beer, or juice, drinking water triggers the stretch receptors in your stomach, which sends a signal to your mind that your stomach is already partially full. That on its own helps with hunger management. So if you're not drinking enough water and other non-caloric beverages throughout the day, you're making it much harder to maintain a calorie deficit. Finally, the last mistake that I alluded to earlier, as well as in previous videos, is not eating enough protein. Eating enough protein should be the centerpiece of almost any diet plan that's designed to help you burn fat. This is because if you don't, it makes it much harder to maintain a calorie deficit since protein is the most satiating macronutrient. By not taking in enough protein, hunger hormones like ghrelin will be elevated, which will stimulate your appetite. A simple demonstration of this can be observed in a study that looked at what would happen when participants raised their daily protein intake from 15% to 30% of their total daily energy intake. The results showed that they automatically consumed 440 fewer calories per day, which led to an average weight loss of 11 pounds in 12 weeks just by eating more protein. Now, aside from how satiating protein is, getting enough protein is also necessary for you to maintain muscle mass on a diet. And maintaining muscle isn't only beneficial for your appearance, but it's also very important for long-term health and for your body composition. So those are 10 major diet mistakes that you want to look out for if your goal is to burn fat. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, make sure you subscribe, and keep in mind, if your main goal is fat loss, you will need to adjust your diet and training regimen over time as your preferences and nutritional requirements change. So if you need any extra help, head on over to my website where we have everything from done-for-you programs that are helping my clients lose 20 pounds or 5% of their body fat in just 6 weeks, to one-on-one coaching and custom-made nutrition plans for longer-term goals. To find out more, click the link below in the description, or you can head on over to my website directly at gravitytransformation.com. I'll see you guys soon.